Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we're back on our Trans Am project, and where we left off before, we had the floor welded in, we had the firewall pretty well welded in. So what I've done is off camera, I went in, we finished up some of our welds that we had to do. We spent a little time cleaning those up, and so let me go around and show you where we're at and what we've got going today. So where we left off, we had pretty much everything welded in. We did go back in. You remember we had a little spot there where the original speedometer cable come through. We welded that little hole up. And again, just spent some time. We've still got a couple little welds that we're cleaning up. We've got our body mounts on both sides fully welded in, and I'll show you that. So we come in and we drilled some plug welds there. We've welded those up down the side and across the bottom here as well. We've got all of our welding done on the inside here from the toe board up to the original firewall. We did go back in. We made some little filler plates here to fill in the drain holes. We did not have any original ones, and we just kind of made those up real quick. We made 4 for all the drain holes. And I think what I want to do, originally they would, these would have been, they've got a little thing here where the metal goes down and it folds over and holds it in. Then I've seen them in the back where they're actually screwed down to the floor. These, we've done a lot of these cars, and really I've never seen anybody that has taken those out for their intended use. So what I'm probably going to do here when we get ready to do the floor, we're probably going to urethane those down or seam seal them down to where they could be removed if you wanted to. But I don't want to run a screw through there to hold them. I don't want screws hanging out at the bottom of the floor. So I think that's what I'm going to do there. And then we'll make kind of a similar plate for this hole here in the back underneath the rear seat as well. One thing that we did do also off camera is we installed our Detroit Speed mini tubs for the rear, and I did not film that. Honestly, I was sick for a couple of days, a little under the weather. I had about lost my voice, so we didn't film that. And another reason, Detroit Speed actually has a really good installation video of them installing these wheel tubs, and I highly recommend, if you're going to do a set of these, to go ahead and reference that video. So I'll put a link in the description to the wheel tubs themselves and their installation video. But we've got those fully welded in all the way around. We've got a little bit of cleaning up to do on our spot welds on the back side, but these give us an extra 2 inches of clearance here. And one of the things too with the Detroit Speed stuff that I will say is they send a really nice set of instructions with their tubs, but there's a couple of things here that can be a little vague in their instructions, and there's a lot of steps to this. So if you're doing these tubs, I really encourage you to go back in and reference their video for the installation of these tubs. But all in all, they're a really nice kit. They went in fairly easy. I think it took me about 2 days to get everything cut and welded back in, but they turned out pretty good. And again, that allows us to run a 12-inch wide rear tire on the back of this thing, which is what we're going to do. So let me show you today what we've got. We've got the trunk lid fitting pretty good. We've got really good gaps on here. Everything lines up really good with our quarters on both sides. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I want to do, since we put new quarters on, we do not have holes to mount our spoilers here on the quarters. So I want to go ahead and fit all 3 pieces of the rear spoilers. I'm going to start, we'll put the original spoiler here on the deck lid, we'll get it lined up, and then we'll fit the new quarters here. We'll drill our mounting holes for that. I think then I want to move on to the back bumper. We did do, this is a fiberglass bumper, and I'll be honest with you, this thing come out of I can't remember the exact company. I'll put a link in the description for it as well, but I do know they're out of Canada. This is our first time to use this. The company that we had originally picked out to use out of Florida is no longer producing bumpers, so we found this one. We've got a front bumper as well, but what I want to do today also, I want to fit this rear bumper up with the actual steel bumper here, and we don't have the absorber that goes in here on top of this, but this is the original. This is actually the rear bumper, whereas this is the bumper cover. But I do want to fit this up. We just kind of originally, when we fit the quarters, we held the bumper cover up just to make sure everything kind of lined up. But I want to fit all of this on here, and my goal is to try to make to where this fits pretty much just like an original. But one concern that I have is the way they've made this with these extra flaps here. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work. We'll get into that in here in just a minute. One of the things that I've noticed right off the bat is this bumper. If you're familiar with Trans Ams, they originally have the bumper jacks that come through, the old school bumper jacks, which is what these tabs are here. So I know I'm going to have to cut these off of the bumper before it can go on. But we'll get into that in just a minute. First off, let me get everything set up here, and we'll start fitting our rear spoilers. So what I did is, since this is the original deck lid and the original spoiler that went on this, all of our holes and stuff was already there. So I just focused on our outside two bolts on both sides there for right now to hold this into place. And as you can see, everything lines up pretty good with this, as you would expect with a factory part. So if we shut that, we still have good gaps, but again, we don't have any holes to line up our other spoilers here. So let's get those lined up and see if we can get the holes marked for that. All right, so here we are. We're going to go ahead and get this spoiler fit up. So what we've got is we have these two studs here on the bottom of this spoiler. Now the later 79 and laters actually are shaped a little different. They have another bolt down here on this end. But since this quarter panel is just in E-coat right now, it'll actually scratch pretty easy. So what I want to do is I want to take this spoiler and kind of line it up here best I can with our trunk spoiler. I want to look at our gap between those two. I want to also make sure that our tail kind of lines up pretty good down here with our quarter and the curvature, and making sure everything kind of lines up pretty decent. And when I'm happy with that, I am going to just gently try to bump down on this quarter, or on this spoiler. Okay, so let me show you there with the camera a close-up of what we've got. And so I've got a scratch right here, which is kind of scratched this way, and I know it moved back. So I'm going to take this as my reference point there. And then on the back here, I'm actually this one here. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to take and center punch these two holes, and I'll drill those out just a little bit bigger than what we need, so our stud has a little bit of room to move around, and then we can get our final adjustment on the spoiler. Now again, we want to go bigger. That's only a 1/4 inch stud. We're going to go a little bit bigger than that, so we have plenty of room for adjustment. Okay, let's see what that looks like there. Again, you can kind of see we have some room for movement, and everything seems to line up pretty good. And then we're a little wide there, but everything else lines up really good, so we can adjust that in the bodywork stage. These spoilers never did really line up just perfect when they left the factory. So let's go ahead and get the other side knocked out, and then we'll see if we can fit a back bumper. So there we have both sides on, and again, we don't have these quarters bolted on. We're still loose on everything. Everything on this side lines up pretty good. We've got the same kind of issue here where a gap's a little bit wider at the top, but again, we can fix that in the bodywork stage. You can see everything across here lines up pretty good on both sides. Again, nothing's set in stone. The main purpose of this is to just get our holes drilled. But again, this already is looking a lot better, and the spoilers there definitely make that look like a Trans Am. So let's get the car picked up a little bit, and we'll see if we can get a back bumper on it. But first, I want to set this up, and I want to go ahead and cut these brackets off here for our rear bumper jacks that we no longer need. So once I've come in and cut around most of the welds, I'm going to use this. This is just a seam buster. We use a lot of times in a body shop. There's several different types and varieties, but it's just basically a kind of a sharper chisel. So we're going to take that and see if we can bust this thing loose. We'll do this in real time just to show you, see if this works. Loose there. See if we can come in from this back side. There we go. I'm gonna pry that up. And there we go. Got that off. And so now all we're left with is just we'll come back in and we'll clean up the rest of where the welds was, and then we'll do the other side the same way. Okay, so we just took a little flap wheel on our grinder and cleaned all of our existing welds up from those brackets that we cut off, just to clean that up. And my hope is I've got the new fiberglass bumper here sitting on the stand as well. So these brackets for the actual mounts, these bolts are welded in, so you just have a stud that comes through your rear body panel, and then you put your nuts on from the inside of the trunk. The new bumper has this extra flap here that lines up pretty much in the same spot as these, but we've not had the two on there at the same time. So my hope is to take this steel bumper and slide it inside here, and use this will be up against our rear body panel, and then those studs will be coming out through here on this. So what I think we're going to do is I may have to get a helper in here. We're going to set this bumper up here on the back of the car, and we're going to try to line it up to where we can actually mark those holes through the rear body panel. We'll mark those 4 holes there on both sides and see, because this flap actually, it can move. It's just fiberglass, so it kind of is flexible. And then my hope is once we do that, our holes are here, and then our studs will come through this flap here, and then we'll be able to set the bumper up there. And then we'll still have to come in and drill some holes for some bolts to come through here, similar to the factory. And I may even make a little steel plate that comes in that has the studs that comes in like the factory bolts do as well, just to provide a little bit of extra strength. So let's see if we can get the back bumper up here held into place, hold it. I may have to get some tape to hold it into place while we mark everything. I know I'll have to have an extra set of hands for that, so let's get set up and see if we can get that fit on. Okay, so as you can see there, we've got the bumper held up there. We just took some tape and kind of taped it and held everything into place temporarily. And I'm pretty pleased with the way this is looking. Of course, you can't really tell we've got tape over the gaps, but one thing that I do notice right out of the gate is that our plate, it doesn't come all the way over and catch those holes completely, which is not just a terrible deal breaker. This is on both sides because this is going to be sandwiched between the body panel here and our bumper bracket. So I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. Plus we have our other bolts that'll come through on the sides here as well to hold it. So this side here, you can't, maybe you can kind of tell here, but this bracket's kind of running uphill. It looks like I may have to trim just a little bit off of this top edge here. And similar to this side over here, it's up flush, but I think I'm going to trim just a little bit of that off. But we've got it held into place good enough to where I can go ahead and mark those holes from the inside. And you can look through there. Not really, can't really see much there. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get those marked, get those drilled, and see where that takes us. Okay, so we've got that set up here, and what I want to do is take a white paint pen, and I'm going to come in from the back side here. I'm taking, put just a little bit of pressure with my hand, make sure everything's good. We're going to go ahead and mark that hole out here for the top. I may have to come through this hole here, do the same thing on the outside. And we'll have to get on the bottom of the car to mark the bottom two bolts. Same scenario here for the driver's side. The only exception is on this hole here. You can see my finger come through, so we don't really have a lot to mark there. I'm going to mark what's there. Same thing on this side. White paint pen. That hole will show up on that fiberglass that way. And now we're under the car, and we're going to do the same thing. We need to mark this hole here and here on both sides, and then the same thing on the driver's side as well. So I'm going to try, again, just put my hand in here and put a little bit of pressure on this piece so we get a good mark on it. Mark that just as best we can. Same thing on the outside. And this side as well. Now we've got our holes marked. We'll take the bumper back off and we'll drill those out. So this is what I was talking about earlier with this plate. I wanted to trim a little bit of that, so I've marked that where I want to trim. And then the same thing on the driver's side here. You can kind of tell how this plate runs uphill. So I want to trim a little bit of that off to make sure we have extra clearance there before we put it back together. Okay, so what I did is we're looking at the bumper here. I want to trim these this tabs off here. So I've run me just a piece of 3/4 inch tape, and I'm going to take a body saw here, and I'm going to try to come in here and cut as closely as I can to that line. See if we can make that happen. Pretty close there, and we did the same thing on the other side there. We've already got our tape on it, and again, let's try to get that cut off. close. I think that'll work. Now we'll go ahead and drill out our holes. Again, I think I'm just going to take my step bit that we used earlier and get an initial hole there. Since we don't have much to cut off here on these, I think I'm just going to take my belt sander and come in and grind those out. Next, I want to kind of oval these holes out just a little bit to give us a little bit of extra room. So I'm just going to take a carbide bit with on a die grinder here, and we'll ream those holes out just a little bit. Okay, now the moment of truth. See if we can get this bumper inside this bumper cover around this tabs and then our overhang here for our license plate. So I've kind of studied it for a minute, and I think the best thing to do is to slide one side in here, try to get that lined up as best we can, get that started there, and then I'm going to flip this over and try to get this piece and bend this tab out of the way. Again, it's just fiberglass. It kind of flexes a little tight. There. Be a little bit different story once we get our bumper absorber in there, but so far I think I'm pleased with that. So we'll take this and set up here, we'll set it back over onto the car and see if we can get a couple of bolts in there to hold that temporarily and see what we're looking like. So now we've got the bumper on. We did go ahead and put a couple of nuts here on the top on both sides to hold that in. But you can see that we have our actual steel bumper in here, and it's actually holding our fiberglass piece up as well. And like I said, overall, the bumper fits pretty decent for you know, an aftermarket fiberglass piece. Obviously, we'll come back in and rework all that, and then of course we'll get some bolts in here and tighten this up here, these two gaps up. But overall, I mean, I'm pretty pleased with it. It's sticking out just a little bit here. And then on the passenger side, kind of the same scenario, which, I mean, like I said, we can take care of all of that in the body work stage. The quarters hanging down a little lower here, but again, we don't have any bolts here on this between the quarter and the bumper here. So I need to mark those. I want to mark the holes and go ahead and get the holes drilled in the back bumper piece first, and then we'll have to come in and then we can mark, once we do that, kind of the same scenario as what we did earlier. We'll fit the bumper back up and then we'll mark those holes there to drill through the quarter panel. Overall though, that looks pretty good. And again, just the more we do, the more it looks like a car. Unfortunately, we're just test fitting all this stuff up. We're getting ready to mount this body onto the rotisserie, but I wanted to make sure how everything was going to work and line up before, because I'm mounting my rotisserie here where this bumper actually bolts on is where I'll mount my rotisserie. So it's going to be on rotisserie for a minute. I want to go ahead and get this done to make sure there was no big issues, and we didn't have to really reinvent the entire wheel here to get this bumper on. But so far so good. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make a plate that will bolt into the back side of this bumper, and it has studs that comes out, and I want our plate to have this same contour and to come all the way down and catch a bolt here and catch this bolt here, and then once it bolts up to the quarter, it'll squeeze those up and tighten them up. So what I'm going to do is I've just got a piece of poster board here that I've cut down. This should be more than adequate of what we need. Now this is just regular poster boards you can buy at the dollar store or Walmart or wherever. But what I want to do is I'm going to take this and set it up here, and I'm going to trace out the initial shape or the curvature here, and then my thought process is that once I get that shape is that it should be pretty close to fit on the inside of the bumper. So I'm going to hold this up here and I make sure that I go down below as far as I need it. Then I'm just going to come in and simply trace this outside curvature, and I'm going to make sure that I go all the way down to the bottom of the bumper and get that curve there. And I think we can just kind of cut that off up here. So this is the curve that we've got. I'm just going to cut this out. So I've got a pair of scissors here. I'm just going to take and kind of cut this down to size here where we need it. Cut this shape out, and we'll see how well that fits to the inside of our bumper. Okay. So we'll see this fits in here. And I think I'm going to have to do a little bit more trimming here at the top. So again, it's a lot easier to make a paper template than it is just going straight to steel. The paper's a whole lot cheaper. So now that fits in pretty good there. We're all the way around, pretty much where we need. But I don't need all of this excess. So I'm just going to come in and mark about 1.5 inches or so, and kind of keep that curve, and we just need about 1.5 inch strip there to cover that. So we'll get that marked up. I'm just going to kind of eyeball that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Something of that nature. Again, we'll cut that. See if this fits in. And that allows us all the room we need to get 2 studs there, and everything will be out of the way. I'm going to trim a little bit of that corner off there just to make sure that it's nothing in the way there. All right, so we'll drill our holes through the bumper, then we'll mark our holes for our bracket, and then we'll cut this out of steel. Okay, so we're going to drill our holes here. Again, we're just going back to a step bit. This is a little bit smaller bit than we used over here on this bracket. We want to kind of get this centered up into this this piece here. So I think we're going to go about right in this area here and drill a hole. Fiberglass is a little thick there. And then the same thing down here on this lower tab. We want to come in, kind of center that up, but we don't want to go over too far, because we've got about an inch or so there on our quarter. I think right there is a good spot. Okay. So now that we have that, those holes drilled, we're going to take our template and we'll line it back up on the back side and mark those holes. Now with our holes drilled, we're just going to take our template, line it up on the back side, like so. Again, we'll mark our hole. And so there we have it. So what we'll do now is we'll take this piece over here and we'll transfer this over to a piece of steel. We'll drill our holes, we'll put some bolts through there, weld that, and that way we can get, we'll have studs coming out through there on that. So we'll do that for both sides. We'll make another template for the other side to make sure, just in case it's any different. Then we'll transfer both of those over to metal. So we're here at the metal table, and what I'm going to do here is we've got our templates, and we've got some 11 gauge steel plate that we're going to use. And I've got my templates marked as the driver's side or the passenger side. So we're just going to lay those out on our metal and trace around those. Now there's 101 different ways you can cut this out. If you're lucky enough to have a plasma table, you could have that done. You could send these templates off and have somebody laser cut them out for you if you wanted to. Like I said, 101 different ways to do it, but we're doing it the old school, traditional way, and it's always seemed to work. So once we have that marked out, while I'm holding it in place, I want to go ahead and center punch my holes for my bolts. I'll center punch that. You notice I'm doing this on a piece of wood, just so it kind of helps that center punch out and kind of helps hold my metal. So do that on this hole as well. Pretty close. Alright, and that one is done. And we'll move over to the other one. Same thing, just marking around the outside of it. Careful not to move it. Okay. Again, we'll center punch our holes. And what I want to do, I want to go ahead and drill my holes first before we cut out these brackets. It's a lot easier to hold a big piece of metal than it is to hold a little piece of metal. And we're not going to do this with a drill press, we'll do this by hand. So let's go ahead and get our holes drilled. So now we have everything cut out. We've cleaned all of our edges up with a flap wheel. So what I'm going to do now, we've actually test fit these on the bumper to make sure which way the bolts need to be welded in. So what we're going to use is we're going to use an 1.5 inch long 5/16 bolt. Now, these are threaded all the way. You can get bolts that have a shoulder here. We don't want to use those because we want to make sure we get this really tight. So we've already drilled a 5/16 hole, so we know that our bolts line right up. And so we're going to set this up here, and we're going to get at both of these templates, or both of these plates. We'll get the bolts welded into them, and then we will put the bumper back onto the car. So now we have the holes drilled in the bumper. We've set the bumper back up there. We've marked our holes here and down lower. We went ahead and marked those. We took the bumper back off. We drilled those holes out. So now we're ready to test fit our plates. I'll show you how this is going to work out. Got to get in here just like that. So that plate lines up very good with the inside of our bumper. Then once we tighten that down, we'll tighten that gap up there a little bit, and it'll be a good strong mounting surface. Now on the inside, we did do that's our bolt here. So like I said, we wanted to do 1.5 inch bolts. We've got plenty of bolts sticking through that we can get a nut started on and get that pulled back in. And then if we need to, once we get everything set, we can come back in and trim the end of that bolt off if we opt to. So that being said, we're going to pull the bumper back off again, because this was just for testing and mocking everything up, making sure, like I said, we had our holes drilled there on the end of the body panels. And we are getting ready to mount this thing up to our rotisserie. So I got John Boy over here working on getting our mounts changed around. We got to do a little bit of work to this thing to readjust it. We had a Mustang on it last time, so we'll have to readjust all of our mounting locations and mounts and everything there to mount this Trans Am body up to it. So I'm gonna get you set up here, and I'll kind of show you what goes into mounting this thing to the rotisserie. I did want to show you real quick when we had the bumper off, the two holes that we drilled. We did holes here, and we ended up going 1/2 inch on those holes, even though we did a 5/16 bolt. Again, that allows us for some room for adjustment and movement there to get everything exactly where we need it to be. And we did that on both sides. So the top one we can get to from the inside, and then the bottom one comes in. You have to do that from underneath the car. So now the body is completely suspended and hanging on the rotisserie. So what we've done is we've got plates mounted up here that goes through where the back bumper bolts on. It goes through the body panel. And I did that on both sides. The reason I do them there is because that all ties in to the rear sub rail, and it gives us easy access. We don't have any obstructions once we roll it over and get to the bottom side. On the front, what we've got is a little bracket made, and we actually use one of the body mounts in the original body bolts here. Mounts up on both sides to the front, and again, that gets pretty much everything out of the way, so we have no obstructions whatsoever underneath the car, so we can work once we flip it over. So this rotisserie has a handle that goes right there, and we're having to do a little bit of work on that. We actually sheared a couple of pins off on the last time we used it, so we're in the process of fixing that. And then that gear there, once we were able to crank the handle, and then we can rotate the body whichever way we want to. So I've sent John to the store after a couple of shear pins. We're going to replace those, get the handle put back in it, and I think we'll probably finish that up. This video up here pretty much after that. We'll show you the rotisserie in action. And until next time, hope you enjoyed it. See ya.